Hello, my name is Michael Wood, and this is the screencast for my master's project. Before I start, the way this video is going to work is that there is going to be sections. So the first section is a general overview of gameplay, just going to talk about kind of some of the core gameplay of it, and my reasons for making this project. Then, what I'm going to do is talk in depth about a select blueprints and kind of the process behind making them, and then finally I am going to give a general overview of kind of how I thought the project went. So first, let's just jump into it. So as you can see, this is a simple third-person action game with a heavy emphasis on progression. So let's just kill these two enemies. So, oof, big time. Okay, so one of the core features of the game are skills. So there's 3 skills in the bottom. So if you hit Q, you'll see you move a fixed distance. If you hit E, you'll see you'll fire a small projectile which upon hitting an enemy will do massive damage in an AoE around that enemy. The last skill is one that just requires the tab screen to see its effect. So as you can see here, we have stats. So we have max health, player damage, attacks per second, movement speed multi, and max PS count. So if I hit R, you see my attacks per second go up to 2.25. So this is just a simple steroid and something that is meant to kind of buff the player in a time of need. So the main focus of this game, of this vertical slice, was progression, was to focus on a progression element. And the way this vertical slice does progression elements is through a risk versus reward system. So as you can see here, we have 4 items, all of which are color coded to a specific stat. This represents the stat that they actually decrease, not increase. And so what you have here is what's called the sharpened arrowhead, which is a damage increase, and then attack speed decrease. So if we pick this up, you see my attack speed goes down by 0.1, 0.1, and my damage goes up by 3. So this is kind of how you build in the game. You sort of look at the items, evaluate your stats, and then pick something that's going to be the most effective for you. So that has been the general gameplay overview. And we are back for the blueprint section of the screencast. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go over the player character as a whole. I'm going to be trying pretty brief about this because after the player character we're going to talk about how enemy spawning works and data tables. So the player is pretty simple. It uses a bunch of float values to determine how quick a player should move, so it multiplies the axis value off of this. So if it's 1 times 1 is 1, so as long as this is a value of 1, your movement speed is sort of flattened. The basic attack works sort of in a kind of hold down fashion, so you hold down and then it sets firing to true, and then just this then proceeds to loop until you release the button, and then a small delay happens and then sets it to false. Pretty simple. Just release and it sets it to false and allows you to fire again. So what we'll do now is we'll just jump straight into the enemy spawning, and while I'm here I will also load up the enemy data table to show that off. So, the way the enemy spawning works is 3 events can cause an enemy to spawn. That is, spawn new wave, event begin play, and spawn enemies. So, after it's checked twice that it can spawn an enemy, it then grabs the enemy data table, which is this, and then looks for a row number. So the way I get a random row number is I have a base string here called row underscore, which, if you'll note, is the first half of each name in any data table I make. After that, I then generate a random integer between these values, so between 1 and 3, I then append them together so they become one. So if it generates 1 as its integer, it becomes row 1, and I'm able to then get the information from the player. After that, it simply just checks if the chosen row is a boss row, and if a boss has already been spawned. If a boss has already been spawned, it'll then have to go through again until it finds one that isn't a boss. So yeah, this is just the simple setting. After that, and then it runs what's called then it gets what's called a custom event called set enemy stats. So this is what this bit here is, and all of this. Pretty simple actually. It takes the data from here. So if we look at, say, the pawn, it has 20 max health, 20 attack damage, one enemy movement speed multiplier, and some range, as opposed to the brute having 100 health, 50 attack damage, 20% reduced speed, higher attack range. Is it higher? Yeah, no, same attack range and same movement range. That's pretty good. Everything but the attack and movement range scales on wave number. So essentially, I get the wave number, convert it to a float, divide it by 10, so 1 becomes 0.1, 2 becomes 0.2, that kind of stuff, and then adds it to just 1, and so then this creates some easy multiplication of round 1 is actually a 10% increase on base, round 2 is a 30%, and so you've got this kind of exponential scaling. And so the second way it spawns enemies is through this bit here, which is we called an update enemy count, which is how we are able to figure out how many enemies have you killed so far, and also it deducts from the amount of spawned enemies. So you're able to kind of figure out how many enemies you've killed and how many enemies are left. Once this value hits 0, it spawns a new wave. It increments on the wave by 1, gives you some time, so it gives you 5 seconds before all the enemies spawn, and it then sets everything back to false, so you can spawn a boss again, and you spawn 3 more enemies that wave. So that's how that scales. So the base value right now in the level is 5, so it goes 5, 8, 11, 14, kind of like that. So those have been some of the blueprints, and after this is the conclusion element. And we are back for the evaluation of the project. So, overall, I think the project went really well. The workflow was consistent and at what I believe was a high quality. I was able to iterate upon feedback from both players and tutors on a very kind of quick note. As far as like did I hit the goals I set out for the project, I think definitely. I've tested this game for quite a while, and I've not really found anything that is super broken when compared to anything else. There's nothing that's kind of like you stack this and win. Everything kind of comes with its own downside, which was innately based in its system. Another goal that I've reached was that I actually gained just a greater understanding of both Unreal as a whole, and more specifically the array elements in there and kind of ways to use arrays. So that's something that as a designer I will look to kind of iterate upon and implement in a higher quality as I learn more. Another thing that I think I've learned, and I've really only scratched the surface of this, and this is very much true, is behavior trees. Behavior trees are incredibly powerful. Something that kind of really surprised me was just like kind of how simple they are once you kind of get the base concept of how they work around. That was something I found really good. Another thing that this project forced me to do was to kind of put myself out there a bit more. So every development update of this project has been uploaded to Reddit, and as you can see, there's been a sort of a progressive increase in viewership, which has been really It got me really kind of happy. So I'll say overall, I think the project went very well, and as far as like kind of things I did poorly, uh, probably could have spent some time on the aesthetics, but again, the aesthetics weren't a main focus. It's just something I could have. Um, some future proofing could have been really helpful. One of the really annoying things in the project right now is that two of the stats are in values instead of float values, which is a real problem when dealing with trying to get the percent of them. So when trying to get 30% damage, I have to convert this to a float, because if the integer is say 3.5, it will come back as say 4 or 3, and just is not something that's super helpful for scaling. So that's something I would definitely change, is kind of shift all these to flow values. A consistent organizational strategy is pretty good. So if you look at some of the later stuff, they're kind of very well organized and look really nice, while like some of the newer stuff wasn't. So I think I should have put a heavy emphasis on making sure the blueprints are readable. That is something else, as well as folder structure. But other than kind of organizational things inside the engine, I think the project went very well. So again, my name's Michael Ward, and this has been my screencast.